Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. We continue our lesson in chapter 8 with the second part of the video. Okay, so for this video, we are going to cover two subtopics, which are the first one is about testing the system and the second one is on the documentation. And after completion of this second part of chapter 8, you will be able to explain about the unit, integration and also system testing. And also you will be able to differentiate between program, system, operations and also the user documentation. Okay, let's look first into the testing of the system. So basically, testing is an activity after the coding process where a programmer must test each program to make sure that it functions correctly. And usually, they are going to start with the syntax error, which is the language grammatical error. After that, they are going to be the desk checking. So desk checking is the process of reviewing the program code to spot any logic error which produce incorrect results. So this process can be performed by the person who wrote the program or by other programmers. Many organizations require a more formal type of desk checking called the structured walkthrough or code review. In addition to analyzing the logic and also the program errors, the project team usually holds a session with users that usually we call as the design walkthrough. So design walkthrough is a session with the users to review the interface with a cross-section of people who will work with the new system and ensure that all necessary features have been included. Then, okay. So the first type of testing, we have the unit testing. So basically, this is the first type of testing. It is a type of testing of an individual program or module. The objective is to identify and eliminate the execution of errors and also the logic errors. Therefore, test data that should contain both the correct and also the erroneous data should be tested for all the possible situations. So programmers must test the programs that interact with other program files and files individually before they are integrated into the system. And basically, this requires a technique called a stub testing. In stub testing, a programmer stimulates each program outcome or result and display a message to indicate whether the program executed successfully. To obtain an independent analysis, someone other than the programmer who wrote the program usually creates the test data and review the result. System analysts frequently create test data during the system design phase as part of an overall test plan. A test plan consists of detailed procedures that specify how and when the testing will be performed, who will participate, and what test data will be used. A comprehensive plan should include scenarios for every possible situation the program could encounter. Regardless of who creates the test plan, the project manager or a designated analyst also review the final test results. The next type of testing is we have the integration testing. Okay, so sometimes it is called integration and sometimes we call it as the link testing. It is actually a testing procedure where it tests two or more programs that depends on each other. For example, okay, so for example, let's say you have a program where it checks and validates, okay, all the customer credit status. And we have a separate program. Okay, so we have a separate program that updates the data of the customer into the database. Okay, so basically we should do the integration testing. Why? Because of the output that we get from the first program, which is the check and also validation, will become the input for the next process. So this is where the link takes place. Okay, so basically the testing will be unsuccessful if the particular output here can't be the input for the update data customer, because it will affect the storage in the database. So this is the example of linking testing that you should perform after the unit testing. Okay, so please remember, basically, you are not allowed to do the integration testing before you have conducted the unit testing successfully. Okay, and the third kind of testing, we have the system testing. Okay, so after completing the integration testing, system testing must be performed, which involves the entire information system. So during the system test, users will enter the data, including any samples of actual or live data, perform queries, and produce reports to stimulate the actual operating conditions. That's why we are using the real users. All processing options and outputs are verified also by the users together with the IT project development team. So basically, these are the objectives of performing the system testing. The first one, we are going to, the first objective is to perform the final test of all the programs, verification of the system that will handle all the input data properly, both valid and also invalid, to ensure that the IT staff has the proper documentation and instructions needed to operate the system properly, and that backup and restart capabilities of the system are adequate, and also demonstrate that users can interact with the system successfully, apart from verification of all the system components and confirmation that the information system can handle predicted volumes of data in a timely and efficient manner. So the successful completion of system testing is the key to the user and also the management approval, which is sometimes we call it as an acceptance test. Okay, means the system has already been accepted by the actual user. The final acceptance test, however, are performed during the system installation and evaluation. So you should regard thorough testing as a cost-effective means of providing a quality product. If conflicting views exist, the management will decide whether to install the system after a full discussion of the option. Okay, so it states here that in actual process, okay, actually the final acceptance test can only be performed and be approved by the management once the system has been installed. Okay, so it is not necessarily that the system already has successfully passed all the system testing, or you can call it as uh, the acceptance test is lulus. Okay, so we should wait until the system has been successfully installed, then we can have the final acceptance test. Okay, the next one is about the documentation. Okay, so it is actually a description. Okay, a description of an information system and helps the users, managers, and IT staff who must interact with it. Accurate documentation can reduce the system downtime, cut costs, and speed up the maintenance tasks. Okay, so under the documentation, we have the first one is the program documentation. The second one is the system documentation. The third one is the operation documentation. And the final one is the user documentation. Okay, so we have 4 types of documentation. Okay, so just now we have 3 types of we have 3 types of testing, and now we have 4 types of documentation. Alright, so the program documentation describes the inputs, outputs, and also the processing logic for all the program modules. The process starts in the system analysis phase and continues during the system implementation. Means the documentation of the program documentation actually has started during the analysis phase. Okay? The system analyst is the one who prepared the overall documentation, such as process descriptions and report layout early in the SDLC phases. So this documentation guides the programmers who construct modules that are well supported by internal and external comments and descriptions that can be understood and maintained easily. Software developers also use defect tracking software, called as bug tracking software, to document and track program defects, code changes, and replacement codes. Okay, so that is about the program documentation, basically about input, output, and also the processing logic. Next, we go to the system documentation. So, because of the name is system documentation, it actually describes about the system functionality and how they are implemented. And in terms of the system functionality, it includes data dictionary entries, data flow diagrams, object models, screen layout, source documents, and the system requests that initiated the project. Okay, move to the third documentation, which is the operations documents. Okay, maksudnya operasi, right? So operation documents, documentation contains all the information needed for processing and distributing online and printed output. Typical operation documentation includes the program, system analyst, programmer, and system identification, scheduling information for printed output, input files and where they originate, emails and report distribution lists, special forms required, including the online forms, error and informational messages to operators and restart procedures, special operations such as security requirements. So the operations documentation must be clear, concise, and available online if possible. If the IT department as an operations group, you should review the documentation with team. Okay, and the final documentation is about the user documentation, which consists of instruction and information to users who will interact with the system, and it includes the user manual, help screen, and tutorials. System analysts usually are responsible for preparing the documentation to help users learn the system. In larger companies, a technical support team that includes technical writers, might assist in the preparation of user documentation and training materials. User documentation must be clear, understandable, and readily accessible to users at all levels. So these are the things that are usually included in the user documentation. So a description about all the major system features, capabilities, and limitations, okay? Description of source document contents, preparation, and samples. A little bit of overview about the menu and data entry screen options. Examples of reports that are produced regularly, security and audit trail information, explanation of responsibility for specific input, output, or processing requirements, procedures for requesting changes and reporting problems, example of any exception situations, frequently asked questions, and also explanation of how to get help and procedures for updating the user manual. So basically the user documentation is for the user, purposely for the user. Most users prefer online documentation, which provides immediate help when the users have questions or encounter problems. Okay? So they are used to have a custom context-sensitive help screens, hints and tips, hypertext, on-screen demos, and other user-friendly features. This can be seen, okay, whenever you have problems. For example, in Microsoft Office, they have the help section where you can search for the type of help that you are looking for, is it? So if basically you are looking for unable to sort, for example, so maybe you are going to type sorting problem. So the Microsoft Office will display or will view the solution according to your problem that you type in this search section. Okay, and sometimes the Microsoft Office provide hypertext. So you can click on the hypertext and they are going to link you to any of the useful resources in the internet. Okay. If the system will include online documentation, that fact needs to be identified as one of the system requirements. If the documentation will be created by someone other than the analysts who are developing the system, that person or group needs to be involved as early as possible so that they are becoming familiar with the software and begin developing the required documentation and also support material. Okay, interactive tutorials are especially popular with users who like to learn by doing, and visual impact is very important. On the other hand, the internet offers an entirely new level of comprehensive and immediate support. So many programs include links to the website, intranet site, and internet-based technical support. So even though online documentation is essential, written documentation material also is valuable, especially in training users and for reference purposes. No matter what form of user documentation your system will require, you must keep in mind that it can take a good deal of time to develop. The time between finishing the codes and the time when a complete package, including the documentation, can be released to users is entirely dependent on how well the documentation is thought out in advance. So neglecting any user documentation issues until after all the program is complete often leads to one of two things. The documentation will be thrown together as quickly as possible just to get it out the door on time, and it more than likely will be inadequate, or it will be done correctly and the product release will be delayed considerably. Okay, so basically the user documentation is very important in any of the system development, and we are going to need more time and also careful thinking in doing the documentation. Tak boleh lah buat within short time and are not selecting the proper words to resemble the documentation for the user. Okay, so that's the end of chapter 8. Part 2, okay, that involve the contents about the documentation as well as the system about the testing. Okay, all right. So we are going to meet again in the third videos. Okay, in the third video. So we have another 2 subtopics to be covered in chapter 8. Thank you very much.